So let me ask you a question. What if our constant search for happiness, for pleasure, was actually the very thing making us miserable? It's a pretty wild idea, right? But it's at the absolute heart of an ancient text we're going to break down today called the Shorter Discourse on the Mass of Suffering. And believe me, its answer is surprisingly relevant.
It all kicks off with this incredibly relatable and honest question from a guy named Mahanama. He's been studying the teachings, he gets it, but he says, look, my mind still gets totally hijacked by greed and hate and all this stuff. I mean, who can't relate to that? That feeling of knowing what you should do, but still feeling stuck in the same old patterns.
So yeah, Mahanama's problem is, well, it's everyone's problem. Why do we suffer like this? And the answer the text gives is probably not what you'd expect.
And here it is, the big, counterintuitive diagnosis. The text says the issue isn't that Mahanama is just a bad person or fundamentally broken. No, it's that some part of him is still deeply attached to enjoying what it calls sensual pleasures. And that attachment, it's like a hook that just keeps pulling him right back into a state of suffering.
Okay, so when we hear sensual pleasures, our minds might go to some pretty dramatic places, but it's actually way simpler than that. The text is very specific here. It's just talking about the good feelings, the happiness we get when our five senses are stimulated. Like the taste of an amazing meal, hearing your favorite song, or seeing a really beautiful sunset.
Exactly. We're talking about all the sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and touches that we find pleasant. These are the gateways to that kind of happiness. But here's the twist. The discourse argues that constantly chasing this kind of easy gratification, well, it comes with a hidden and very steep price tag.
So, what is this hidden price? The text calls it the drawbacks, and it lays out this powerful chain reaction of suffering that starts with something we all do, just trying to earn a living.
This whole cycle feels like it could have been written yesterday. First, there's the pure toil, right? The hard work just to get by. If you don't succeed, you're filled with sorrow. But, and this is the key part, even if you do succeed and get some wealth, now you've got the anxiety of protecting it. And finally, when you eventually lose it, and you always do one way or another, you're left with nothing but regret. It's set up as a total lose-lose situation.
And this craving for more, for what feels good, it doesn't just stay inside us. The text argues that it escalates. It starts small, with arguments between family members over possessions. Then it grows into fights between towns or social groups. And ultimately, it explodes into full-blown war between nations, all of it driven by this deep-seated desire for what other people have.
And according to the worldview of this text, there's one final, ultimate drawback. If you live a whole life driven by this relentless chase, it says you're reborn into a state of pure suffering, a place of loss. This is framed as the ultimate spiritual cost of not being able to let go of these fleeting pleasures.
Okay, so that's a pretty bleak picture. It basically says that if you chase pleasure, you get a mountain of suffering. So what are you supposed to do? What's the alternative? This question right here is the major pivot point in the whole discourse.
To get to the alternative, the Buddha sets up this amazing philosophical showdown. He runs into a group of ascetics, think extreme spiritual practitioners, who are absolutely convinced they have the answer. And their answer is the total opposite of chasing pleasure.
Their philosophy is this: you don't get pleasure from pleasure. You only get pleasure through pain. They believe that you have to punish your body, put it through extreme hardship to basically burn away all your past bad actions and eventually earn a future of pure bliss. It is a path of radical self-denial.
But the Buddha doesn't really argue with them about pain versus pleasure. He goes right for the foundation of their whole belief system. He asks this simple but just devastating question: are you guys absolutely sure that you even existed in the past? And they have to answer honestly, well, no, we're not.
And then he pushes them again. Okay, let's say you did exist. Are you sure you actually did bad things that you need to burn off? And once again, they have to admit, no, we don't know that for sure. All of a sudden, their entire practice, all this pain they're putting themselves through, it starts to look like it's built on nothing but assumptions.
And here's the final blow. He asks, and do you even know how much suffering is left to get rid of? Is there an end point? And of course they don't. Their path has no map, no clear beginning, and no finish line. And by showing them this, the Buddha creates the perfect opening to present his own, very different path.
So the ascetics, they kind of push back with one last challenge. They basically say, come on, a powerful king, someone who has every single pleasure you can imagine, he has to be happier than you are. And this sets up the grand finale of the whole text.
The Buddha's response is a simple test case. He asked them, "Can your great king Bimbisara, with all his power and wealth, experience pure, perfect happiness for even one full day and night without moving or speaking?" The ascetics admit, no, he can't. The Buddha then says that he himself can stay in that exact state of perfect, unshakable bliss for 7 days and 7 nights straight. The difference couldn't be clear. Worldly pleasure is fragile and needs constant stimulation, while this inner bliss is profound, stable, and completely self-contained.
So, the verdict is in. The greatest, most superior pleasure isn't found by getting more stuff, and it's not found by punishing your body either. It's an inner state of peace so deep and so powerful that it makes a king's life look stressful and unstable by comparison. And faced with that logic, the ascetics really have nothing left to say.
And that brings us to the final question, one that really pushes back against almost everything we're taught today. We're told to chase our dreams, to get what we want, to pursue happiness. But this ancient text leaves us with a totally radical thought to chew on. What if the greatest happiness isn't found in anything we can get, but in everything we're willing to let go of?